Charlie Landing is the founder of BestAgent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
The problem is not estate agents. The problem is the control and power behind the scenes that sets the rules of the game in the industry. The fact that I just don't go along with the whole industry bullshit narrative doesn't mean I'm not on your side. To have any chance of delivering more movers a better moving experience, I've also got to solve the problems that good agents are facing. And that's what I'm here to do. Good morning. It is still the morning, it's actually now midday, and welcome to the second ever Best Agent Monday midday meeting. I'm very excited about our guests today. We've got Julian O'Dell, who is an estate agent of 37 years experience. And now a very highly respected industry trainer who I'm thrilled to have on the show, followed by Rick, RICS member and estate agency owner, Andrew Simmonds, who's got some gripes to share with us about what's been happening in his agents the last week or so. But as ever, the format we're going to be following is number one, I want to give agents who watch this a quick take on the most important things happening in the national news insofar as they affect the housing market. Now, just before we get into that, a reminder, straight after this at 12:30 sharp, on the link at the bottom of the screen, and also the link in the live chat, and also a link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, is the agents only live unrecorded video conference. Last week's was fantastic. We had a really heated debate among agents about whether or not vendor video leads, as in vendor leads that come with a video message from the vendor to you, which you can then respond to with your own personal private video message to those vendors, are a good thing or a bad thing. And there was a really interesting debate last week about the agents that like that idea and the agents that don't like that idea. And actually all the arguments that came out on that made me go, yep, that's what we want. We want the agents who don't like it for those reasons to perhaps not be doing it as much as the agents who do like it and are more comfortable doing it. So it was a really interesting debate. Join us at 12:30 if you're an agent. Julian O'Dell will be joining us as well, so you can ask him questions directly. It's private, it's unrecorded, it's only agents, and it's always a really good old conversation. So without further ado, the hottest topic in the housing market for the last few months, and increasingly, has been what house prices are going to do. This morning, Rightmove Index came out showing that their asking price of the newly listed properties in the last month has started to fall. But the story that caught my eye in the national news, and I had to put it on 5 Fact Friday last week because I think it's the biggest thing, is this. A lot of agents are unaware of the fact that the number one economic thing that influences and affects house prices more than anything, more even than interest rates, is wage growth and earnings. Okay, wages, earnings, and unemployment together. Okay, and I'm seeing an awful lot of people who still think that employment is strong. That is now an outdated point of view, quite severely point of view. And I'm just going to spend 1 minute on this because I want all of you to understand that I've got a. I'm going to share this page with you. 1 moment. Here it is. So this is on Bloomberg last week. Okay, unemployment up at record pace in sign of cooler jobs market. But this was the article I really wanted to share with you, which I think is even more powerful. So this is James Reed, who is the chairman of Reed Employment, the UK's largest recruitment agency. And he put out he did this interview with Bloomberg last week, saying, and in that story, it's quite staggering, okay? Jobs listed with Reed Recruitment are 24.4% down in the 3 months to June compared to the same period a year earlier, and 26% lower than the same time in 2019 before the pandemic. All right. So if you say to your customers, clients, prospects, oh, well, employment's really, really strong, you might as well be saying, I'm really behind on the news. And given that this is one of the most important factors affecting house prices, I'm not telling you what to think about it. I'm just making sure that you are aware that unemployment is up. Okay, the official ONS figures came out last week as well. Okay, so unemployment rate was estimated at 4%, 2% higher than the previous quarter. So unemployment is rising. Job vacancies are falling fast. Large company insolvencies are at their highest in 40 years, so that there is an almost mathematical certainty that unemployment is going to get a lot worse before it gets better, which will hit people's incomes, obviously, and will hit the housing market. So just be aware of it. Form your own views, but be aware of that. That was point number one. Now, point number two in the news is that this week, so I try and pick each week one story from the economy and one story from politics. Now, there's a lot of politics going on, and they're starting to posture for the election. But this week, we've got 3 by-elections happening on Thursday. All of them are by-elections that are currently held by Tory MPs. And it is expected, and so like one of them has got a very big, it's Boris Johnson's one, so a very big majority. It's kind of expected that they're going to lose all 3, but no one's confident. I think if all 3 of those seats are lost by the Tories, it's going to make people think, and the news will report that that's it, the Tories are dead at the next election. A lot of people are expecting that, but again, I don't have an opinion on it either way. I'm just thinking that that's what's likely to happen. So, number one political story this week, by-elections on Thursday. All 3 are currently Tory seats. It's likely, we don't know, I don't have an opinion either, but it's expected that all 3 seats are going to be lost. And if so, that starts to make it look more and more likely that we're going to have a Labour, or at least a different government at the next election. So that's the point of politics. Right. That's enough rambling from me. I know you guys prefer listening to my guests than you do to me, and that's great. That's why I'm going to have these great guests on here. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Julian O'Dell into the screen. Julian, good morning. Welcome. Good afternoon even. Welcome. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm very well, thank you, considering it's Monday morning. Thank you for asking. I hope everyone tuning in is equally well.
Thank you very much. And actually, I've just realized I've missed out one of the points I had to say. This is how disorganized I am, which I'd like you to stay on the screen for, because the question I'm going to ask you, which I'll ask now so everyone knows what's coming, but don't answer it just yet if that's okay, is that with Rightmove this morning confirming that asking prices are now falling, I don't think anyone's in any doubt that nationally speaking, the housing market has turned negative. Who knows how long for, who knows how far it'll go down, but that's now happened and no one is disputing that any longer. In a falling market, as you and I both know, for different reasons, life is very, very different for estate agents on the front line in a falling market compared to a rising market. But seeing as we haven't had a falling market for some 15 years, I want to ask you, what are the things that agents should be doing that they may not know that they should be doing? Because there are parts of the country where it's only just recently started to turn. There have been some parts of the country where it's actually still been quite positive for quite a while. And there will be agents watching this who are going, well, I've never done any different. It's just so set into my psyche what I do, but actually that's changed. What should I do? So that's my question. But just before we answer it, Rightmove have published this morning that the average asking price of newly listed homes coming to the market, so that's before price reductions, and that's not the average of all homes, that's just newly listed stuff, has dropped by 0.2% or about 900 quid. What I wanted to do just to compare and contrast that is to show you what the figure is for the whole market. Now, BestAgent has the data for the whole of England and Wales. And just a couple of seconds on this now. I'll put it on the screen now. So what we've got here is that the average asking price of unsold properties, which interestingly is a lot higher than Rightmove's newly listed properties, but this is for the whole market, is down 0.9%. That's actually about the last 3 weeks. We're still refining the cadence, the frequency of these price releases. But so the difference is Rightmove is only newly listed stuff, whereas that figure is for everything on the market that's been there, that's currently listed as for sale, including price. That's the average price, including price reductions. Now, below that is the average price is the average asking price of properties showing a sale agreed. So that's that. Julian, my question, back over to you now. What should agents be doing differently in a falling market?
Okay, so the first thing I should say, for those that don't know me, I've been in estate agency since 1983. I know that sounds unlikely, and you're probably thinking I started when I was 3, but that is the actual reality. So it is actually my 40th anniversary was just a few weeks ago. During that time, for the vast majority of the time, I worked as an estate agent on the front line, and latterly was a partner of a multi-award-winning estate agency called Thomas Morris, who some of you may have heard of. And we sold that a few years ago, and I now help estate agents survive and thrive through training and consultancy. So that's my background. Just one thing I wanted to throw into the mix before I answer the question about the Rightmove report. I think the bigger thing, potentially, even beyond the interesting stuff that you've thrown out there, Charlie, is the fact that they said that sales are 12% down on the comparable period in 2019, which was perhaps the last normal market. And of course, prices in reality for estate agents are an indicator, but a slight red herring potentially, because it's clearly the number of transactions that are the lifeblood for estate agents. So I didn't want that point about the 12% fall in sales to get missed. So to me, having steered Thomas Morris and other businesses through downturns before, notably in the early 90s and also the more recent one in 2008, we came through 2008 unscathed, battered and bruised, but unscathed, whereas a number of our competitors and agents similar to us were going bust. And it was a tough time. Transactions halved. Back to my point about transactions halved from 08 to from 07. Yeah, so wow. depending which metric you use, 1.2 million transactions in 2007, 0.6 million in 2008, broadly speaking. And of course, whatever you're selling, we were selling houses, but if you're selling baked beans and there's suddenly a health scare and suddenly only half the amount of baked beans are going to be sold the following year, then all the people selling baked beans are going to have to do something about that, because they can't just sit there and watch the size of the market drop by 50%. And just capitulate and hope it gets better. Some agents were very slow to react, and I think that was their downfall. So there's loads of stuff I talk to my clients about. I have been talking about this scenario for over 12 months with a lot of my agency clients, because I could see this coming. I'm not a crystal ball or a Mystic Meg person, but it was just so blatantly obvious to me that we were heading for the rocks as far as the market was concerned.
Can I just stop you there for a second, Julian? Cannot tell you how nice it is for me to hear an agent say what you just said, that 12 months ago you could see this coming. It makes me think that I'm not going mad, because
you're not, Charlie. I mean, I've kept an eye on your stuff, and I know people call you a doom monger and everything else, and then probably would put the same label on me potentially. But I'm a realist, and my attitude is hope for the best, but expect the worst. Because if you prepare for the worst and then it doesn't happen, you're still quids in anyway, because all the best practice things that you do in a tougher market stand you in even better stead in a good market anyway. So you've got nothing to lose. So I know we're limited for time, so I just want to get these 3 main points across. And obviously it goes without saying, if people are left wanting more, they want to pick up the phone or drop me an email, that's absolutely cool. So the 3 things, and there's lots more than this, but the 3 things I distilled it down to because of the time pressures today were: number 1, know your numbers. Number 2, peel your onions. And number 3, learn your lines. So already you're probably thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? Okay, so the first one, know your numbers. What I mean by that is you've absolutely got to drill down and know exactly what it costs you to run your business. Now, I know that sounds very Janet and John. I don't want to patronize you, but I've dealt with agents over the course of time, agency owners who've said to me, oh, it costs about X amount to run my business each month. And when I've looked at it in detail, it's often as much as 50% more than that, because they forget about different taxation and whatever else they may forget about. So the first thing to do is know your numbers. What is it going to cost you to keep the doors open? Look at your expenditure, focused on the must-haves, and look at the nice-to-haves and maybe think about ditching those. Go to suppliers and renegotiate with them where you can, because landlords of our premises that we were renting in the 08 market were quite happy to take a rent cut, because at least they had a tenant paying some rent, than us saying, sorry, we can't trade anymore and we've gone bust, so you've got nobody. So all of these opportunities now to look at your bottom line, and once you've decided that, communicate that to everybody in the company. because we were very transparent in Thomas Morris. We spoke to everybody from part-timers through to managers, obviously all the owners, the 7 partners that were at the helm, me and 6 others. We were very transparent with our figures so that everybody knew what success and failure looked like. We had a big meeting and communicated that and basically said, your jobs are okay as long as we're bringing this amount of money. And so that was the main focus. So that was the first thing we did. We also then looked in more detail at things like our fee levels, because an average fee that had been acceptable to us when X amount of transactions were being done, if those transactions were going to fall, then that acceptable fee was no longer acceptable. We had to keep the doors open, and therefore we increased our fees through a heck of a lot of training, which obviously I did. We charged an upfront fee as well in that market, which was an interesting transition and actually relatively easy, if I'm honest, compared to how we thought it might go. And lots of things we did. So really knowing your numbers is point number 1. Peel your onions is the second point. Now that, again, you might think, what the flipping heck does that mean? Well, it means this. It means that once you get your numbers clear, actually you don't need to panic, because when you're looking at your numbers, the reality is if you do the right amount of transactions at the right fee, you'll cover your costs and you'll be okay. And those figures very often didn't look that scary. We had 8 offices, and we looked at, we did the exercise for all these offices, and we were drilling down to manageable numbers of transactions. But what we needed to do those transactions was the right amount of must-move people.
Yeah.
Because in this market, the might-move people sit on their hands. They run to the hills, some of them, they sit on their hands, they still potter about on Rightmove, but they don't take action because they don't know what to do. And when people don't know what to do, they do nothing. They're confused, which breeds inertia, until they're unconfused when they think, oh, the market's definitely going in that direction or whatever. At the moment, there's lots of contradictory figures out there about what prices are doing, and so people are confused. And I know from markets I've worked in, when people are confused, it's our worst enemy, actually,
right?
Because the might people sit on the fence and wait.
And cost you money.
But the good news, absolutely, yeah, that's exactly right. The good news is, though, guys, is that there will be, as there were in 2008, there were 0.6 million transactions, which tells you there were plenty of people still looking to move in 2008 because they have to move. And they're the people you've got to find. And peeling your onions is about talking to every client and every customer and asking the right questions and peeling away layers of information until you can look at the heart of that onion and say, I know what this person is all about. This is a must-move client, or this is a must-move buyer. And these are the people I'm going to be all over like a rash. These are the people that are going to get Rolls-Royce treatment from me, because these are the people that will keep me alive in business if I look after them. And I'm speaking from experience here. My son was a must-move buyer. He had no service from the agents that he bought his flat from. They happened to put it on a portal. He happened to see it. He happened to view it. He happened to buy it. I actually asked him the question. He moved in on May the 31st. This is very current. I said, did they sell you that flat? He said, no, Dad, they didn't. I bought it, but they didn't sell it to me. I said, would you go back to them when they, when you're ready to move? Because in a few years' time, no doubt he'll want to have kids and this, that, and the other. And he said, no, why would I do that? There was no interaction, no human service, no differentiation. They were what I call a portal puppet estate agent.
Wasted opportunity for that agent.
Totally. A gift, absolute gift, Charlie. Yeah. I mean, absolute gift. He's never sold a property before. So why wouldn't he go back to the agent he bought from if they looked after him? Of course he would. He's never sold a property before. So in 2 or 3 years' time, he would, of course, he'd go back to them. But he's got no relationship with them at all. There was no human connection. It was, I won't bore you with the details. But so they didn't peel the onion, if that makes sense. So don't panic. Look at, find the must-move sellers and the must-move buyers. And when you do that, you can start to put them together, particularly if you follow point 3. And point 3 is learn your lines. And what I mean by that is truly knowing better than ever before what your bottom line is for your clients and your top line is for your buyers. Now, that depends on you having some very skilled and diligent conversations to say to your vendors. You'll have vendors this morning in real time who are sobbing into their coffee this morning because they've gone another weekend without a viewing, and they're now beginning to get into panic mode. What the heck are we going to do if we don't find a buyer? Because they're must-move people. They're moving jobs 200 miles away, or they're splitting up, or they're expecting triplets, or they're going to end up with their kid in the ruffian school, and they don't want that happening. They've got to move catchment area. All of these strong reasons. So you have to speak to those people and say, look, the market has changed, but there are still people out there. If I were to find you a buyer that stood at your garden gate with a suitcase full of money, viewed your house, loved it, and wanted to buy it and complete quickly, What would need to be in that suitcase to tempt you? How much would it, and you have those conversations and you find out what their outstanding mortgage is. Again, there are people, I'm sure, on some of the agents' books, perhaps even people that are tuning in today, vendors on your books, and you've got no idea how much equity they've got because no one's thought to say, out of interest, what's your outstanding mortgage at the moment?
Right.
And so if you think about a vendor at 300,000 and you get an offer of 275, if their outstanding mortgage is 40 grand, they might start to think about that. If their outstanding mortgage is 285 because they've remortgaged to build a conservatory last year, then 275 is not going to float their boat. So you need to know and learn your lines about your clients. What is their bottom line? If you presented them with the perfect buyer, what's their bottom line? And similarly, with your buyers, you need to say to every buyer upon registration, and keep asking the question as things unfold, if I found you the absolutely perfect property, what's the very most you think you'd be able to stretch to? And if they tell you a figure, I'll tell you now, in my experience, that figure is always different from the figure they lead with when they come on the phone. Oh, yeah, I'm looking to maybe spend about 300. Listen to the language, about 300. What does that mean? For some buyers, it means 335.
Julian, thank you very much. I'm going to have to wrap it up here. Otherwise, poor Andy's going to run out of time. But that was gold dust. And for anyone watching again, any agents watching, Julian is going to be in the live unrecorded video conference straight after this. The link is in the comments and the live comments, also at the bottom of the screen. No, that one. And yeah, in the description underneath as well. It's bestagent.co.uk/agents-only if you want to chat and pick his brains. One last thing very quickly for you, Julian. You might be interested to know that one of my moving home with Charlie followers, who was following for a while, who was a first-time buyer in her late 40s and was being forced out of, she'd had employer-provided accommodation for her whole career as a veterinary nurse, managed to buy a home, and she said she found them, and it was a great thing. And then I said to them, "Who was the agent?" She went, "It's Thomas Morris." And she said that if it hadn't have been for Thomas Morris being such a great agent, she probably wouldn't have bought. They really made her feel that she trusted them, she loved them, and she said if she ever has to sell them, which she hopes she doesn't. So it was a wonderful story to hear that from a buyer.
Great to hear. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Julian, we'll see you straight afterwards. Let me, without further ado, thank you very much. See you soon. Bring Andrew Simmonds. Simo, how are you?
I'm good, Charlie.
Unlike Andy, unlike Julian, you and I have met a few times, and you're very kindly have me on your The Right Move property show podcast as a guest. I'm always curious to know whether or not you've actually had an email or a letter from Rightmove going, you can't call it that. Not so far?
Not yet. But yeah, it's a play on words.
Yeah, I know. It's great, and I love it. But so everybody, for those of you who don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's off the top of my head, Andrew is a surveyor of some 20 years.
Yeah, right? Give you that.
And more recently have become an estate agency owner, and you've got two brands in the West Country, Parker's and is it Country Property?
Country Property, yeah, in the Cotswolds.
Two very different businesses, aren't they?
Yeah, very different, and in very different locations, and that was obvious in how each location. You know, you spoke maybe with Julian earlier on about how the location makes a difference, and it's a huge difference either side of the Bristol divide.
So this segment is when each week we have on a guest agent who's got something to share with us about what's happening in the front lines of your business that's driving you mad, or a good story or a bad story, but something that's useful for other agents to know, and any movies who might be watching this as well. So I've got no idea what you're going to say. So
I've got a good and a bad. Okay, so the good, we're talking about Rightmove and things that have been announced today, and there's something in this. You and I have been banging on, and just like Julian said, I'm absolutely pleased as punch to hear what he said about the market dropping for the last 12 months. And you know, you and I have been very clear on that in what we say. And I, on the front line, have been trying to educate vendors that is the case. I liken vendors to have memories like goldfish, and they only really hear the last 2 years. But Rightmove have actually smelt the coffee today, and estate agent today announced that Rightmove have eventually said sales are falling and right-priced homes are selling, and that's an interesting point, and it's an accurate point. Give you a real live example. Within the last 6 weeks, I sold a property that was on with us last year. Vendors sadly couldn't find. So we relisted this year, 25k lower than last year. Vendor was totally realistic. However, sold it for 50,000 over asking. And that's in this current market. And that is because, you could say there's a stroke of luck to it, but there were two people absolutely desperate for that house in the location. And so it was priced right, it drew the audience, and it sold well. And that's the type of thing that we really need to educate. And that's something that I think comes out of especially the things that Julian's just said. It just puts it to home what agents need to do on the front line. And it's those questions of asking, it's about getting that right. So that's a positive. So properties are selling in this current market if they're priced right and they're marketed well as well. Look at the different areas with regard to marketing. The bad and ugly that I want to raise at the moment at the front line is conveyancers. Now, I have an absolute utmost respect for conveyancers. They do hold transactions together, and they do work. Those that are good conveyancers work well with agents. And it's really important that agents build those relationships, because without those relationships, you're never going to progress a sale over the line and to completion. So it's really important to build those relationships, have regular contact, and work with the conveyancers. I had 5 exchanges due on Friday last week.
Wow.
Only one of those exchanged. And okay, that's across two offices, but only one exchanged. And the reason the other 4 didn't exchange were, one of the conveyancers was out of the office from 3 o'clock. Another one, the solicitor was being extra cautious considering their PI, and therefore were not prepared to exchange without doing a double check effectively to the lender. The third one, the vendor solicitor was unable to contact the purchaser solicitor. Unable to contact a purchaser solicitor. It's ridiculous. And the final one, which is, phenomenally frustrating, is that one solicitor in this day and age would not accept a digital signature. It had to be a wet signature. So and there was an article put out on over the weekend as well, or maybe Friday, that Doug, I can't remember the name of it now, the national law firm, was it Dutton Gregory, I think?
Yes.
They announced that estate agents will go bust if conveyancers continue doing what they're doing, and that's slowing the process and holding things up. So that's,
it kills the cash flow, doesn't it?
Oh, cash flow is out of the window. Give you an example. One, and I'll quite openly say this. One of my branches, I had to shift £20,000 of pipeline from June to July because of conveyancers. And so it's a huge sum of money for small businesses.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Julian was talking about was riding that storm when we have this falling market as agents. And frankly, you're in the lap of the gods when it comes to a conveyancer who, they're holding things up. I've got conveyancers at the moment on progression where things, inquiries haven't been responded to.
We've only got 30 seconds to go, so it's just you need to wrap it up. Sorry, we're running out of time. But yeah, okay. So what did you say, just to finish up, 30 seconds, what did you say to your clients? How did the clients take it when they're expecting exchange?
Well, they're just beside themselves, and they're banging on to the conveyancers. Monday it must happen. So as soon as I leave now, Charlie, I'm going progressing.
I bet you are. Well, I mean, and it's good for everyone to hear that, especially people who, non-agents and movers and stuff, that, these things happen. The best of your ability, they're out of your control when conveyancers behave like that, and it affects everything. It affects your cash flow, your business, your clients' moves, and could potentially lead to some of those deals falling through, which is the nightmare, isn't it? You just want them over the line. Guys, I've got to wrap it up so that we can start the 12:30 meeting, the live conference on time. Simo, thank you very much indeed. See you in the live conference in a minute. Thank you to both Simo and Julian. You've both been fantastic. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you on the show. I hope that's great. Last week's video got almost 1,000 views across the channels. Hopefully this week we'll have the sort of same. So we're really helping agents out there. Otherwise, guys, have a great week. See you next Monday at midday for the next Monday's meeting. And hopefully see as many of you as possible in the live Best Agent Agents Only conference room right now. Thanks, guys. See you there. Bye-bye.